If your fantasy football team is dominating right now or you have a losing record, it doesn't matter. You still have to be aggressive on the waiver wire every single week. If you want to win a fantasy football championship, don't let your foot off the gas. Continue to be aggressive. That's why in this video, we are talking about 10 plus players that you need to be adding in fantasy football before week 8. Travis Hunter should not be available on your waiver wire. He could be the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver 1 coming out of the bye week. So if he is available, he would be my top ad here. But I'm assuming he's not going to be available though. So starting with my number 1 pickup of the week, it's Oronde Gadsden, the rookie tight end for the Chargers, who broke out in a massive way in week 7, 7 receptions, 164 yards, a touchdown on 9 targets, 29.4 fantasy points. That was the most receiving yards by any rookie this season, third most by a rookie tight end in a game ever. This is not your average tight end, ladies and gentlemen. He's a very natural receiver. He has confident hands. He's special after the catch. He's pretty much an oversized receiver playing tight end. And he's looking like an emerging superstar for the Chargers, who carries massive upside, especially when the Chargers are trailing in a game. As we saw in week 7, they're playing catch up. Herbert had 55 pass attempts, and that was in a game where Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, and Keenan Allen all played, which makes this even more impressive. And while it's important to note, obviously there won't be a game every single week where Herbert has 55 pass attempts, and there might be situations where it's a Keenan Allen day or it's a Ladd day, right? But when you have a tight end that shows this kind of ceiling that you can get off the waiver wire, you pounce immediately. And let's also mention, this isn't like his first game where he's performed. Last week, he racked up 7 receptions, 68 yards on 8 targets, 11.8 fantasy points. So he was already kind of building his way up to what was a really massive performance. And I think he's a very strong ad this week if you need a tight end, as there's 6 teams on bye. There's injuries all over the place. The Chargers actually play on Thursday Night Football against the Minnesota Vikings, who have allowed the 10th most schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game to the tight end position. So this is a really talented player on a really good offense, attached to Justin Herbert, who's already flashed greatness at this point, fantasy stardom. And if you need a tight end, obviously don't dump all your fab on him, but be aggressive getting him on your team, because I think he could be really usable in fantasy for the second half of the year. Moving on to our next guy, Kyle Monangai. This is a guy who's been on waiver wire videos, stash videos for weeks now. So hopefully he's already on your roster, but if he's not, this is another rookie who broke out 13 carries, 81 yards, a touchdown, 6.2 yards per carry, chipped in 2 receptions for 13 yards, 17.4 fantasy points, 46% of the snaps, which is notable. We'll talk about that in a second. But this Bears run game, as of late, has been cooking. We know Monangai and Swift combined for over 200 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns in week 7. And the rookie only played 5 fewer snaps than Swift. Now, was this a situation that this happened because Swift was coming into the game banged up? Or is this really becoming a timeshare? Or was it the nature of the game against the Saints where it was a blowout and they wanted to see what they had in the rookie, right? All of those things can be true. But what do we know about Ben Johnson? He loves to use a running back by committee. He did it in Detroit. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. Obviously, you can argue Gibbs and Montgomery are 2 different caliber of players than Swift and Monangai, but still, Ben Johnson doesn't like to just use one running back. History tells us that. So I would not be shocked at all if that's what he's doing in Chicago. He's going to use both of these guys going forward. And this is a bet on a rookie continuing to improve in an offense that looks okay. Caleb Williams, this overall nature of this Bears offense has been disappointing, but the run game has been great, as the Bears offensive line ranks top 5 in run block win rate. So you love to see that. If you're desperate for a running back, then Kyle Monangai should be a top target for your fantasy team. I think he needs to be rostered in all formats. I would be aggressive getting him on your team. All right, moving on to our next guy, Kayshon Boutte, who has been balling for the Patriots as of late. Week 6, he had 5 receptions for 93 yards, 2 touchdowns, 26.3 fantasy points. And then last week, 2 receptions, 55 yards, but still got in the end zone on a very impressive touchdown from Drake May. It was kind of a bomb where he stretched out, made the grab. 13.5 fantasy points, 75% route participation, which is tied for the team lead, and has the highest catch percentage above expectation of any receiver in the NFL this year. He He's the clear-cut number 2 target in this offense behind Stephon Diggs, and he gets the benefit of being attached to Drake May, who's an ascending superstar right now, who could be the MVP in the NFL this year. So, like, yeah, why would you not want as many pieces of this Patriots offense as possible? Now, I wouldn't be touting Keyshawn as much if he was on a bad offense with an average quarterback, but the situation does help. And Booty is a really talented player that a lot of people kind of forgot about. And he's also a very young player. He's only in year 3, 23 years old, meaning he has plenty of room to grow, to progress, to get better as the season goes on. And if New England just starts to give him more work, if his target share rises, then he could be a player that could be a league winner down the stretch for your fantasy football team. I would be wanting to add him on my roster now. Again, Keyshawn isn't this big flashy name that you get excited about to add him onto your roster, but some of these quieter guys that are really kind of performing well all year long tend to be the guys who win people fantasy football leagues. I think he has nice flex appeal this week with all the injuries. And obviously another situation, don't go crazy with your fab, but I do think he's very usable in fantasy for the rest of the year. This isn't like a 1-week rental. I think Booty is going to be involved in this Patriots passing attack for the rest of the season. So if you need a receiver on a good offense attached to an elite quarterback at this point, then I would be targeting Keyshawn. All right, moving on to our next guy, Xavier Legette, who has come out of nowhere for the Panthers. He was kind of an afterthought as of late, but he had a huge game in week 7, 9 receptions, 92 yards, touchdown on 11 targets, 24.2 fantasy points. He now has a touchdown in 2 out of his last 3 games and is coming off by far his best game of the season. As, like I said, he was kind of looking like he's being phased out of this offense, looking like he was going to be a bust in the NFL. But he was like, not so fast. He's definitely a very talented player, former first-round pick, and it did help that Tet McMillan was locked up by Sauce Gardner for most of the game, which left Xavier open early and often. And I think he becomes an even more attractive add because Bryce Young is probably not going to play in week 8. He's dealing with a high ankle sprain. That means Andy Dalton is going to take over as QB1, and that is a huge boost for everyone on this offense, all the pass catchers. And I like betting on talented players. We've always known Legette to be ultra talented. Like I said, former first-round pick. He has all the makings to be a superstar in the league. He just hasn't put it all together yet. But this is only his 2nd year in the NFL. He's got like an A.J. Brown type of build. Not saying he's of the talent of A.J. Brown, but he does have some things you just can't teach, right? Which is size, speed. I think he has nice upside in this Carolina offense. We know Jalen Coker is kind of working his way back into a role. Tet McMillan is not going anywhere. So there is a fair amount of pass catchers, but Legette has flashed. He needs to be added, especially if this does continue. Again, a younger player that could just get better in year 2. And with Andy Dalton taking over this week, I think Legette is very flex worthy for fantasy. All right, moving on to our next guy, Isaiah Davis, who we've talked about before on this channel. He's been on stash videos, waiver wire videos, but he's a player that just continues to be very efficient for the most part with his limited touches. And in week 7, he had 2 carries for 10 yards, 2 receptions for 22 yards, 4 targets, 5.2 fantasy points. Those numbers don't blow you away, but it was his overall usage. He had a season high 48% of the snaps, and he only played 3 fewer snaps than Breece Hall. I do really like Davis as a player. He has a nice 3-down skill set. He's a bigger back, can get it done on the ground and through the air. It seems like the Jets love Davis to me. They don't seem like they like Breece Hall. It's a really weird thing going on in New York. Breece Hall did get banged up in week 7 against the Panthers. Looked like some sort of ankle sprain. All the reports are that it was minor. He came out fine, but we don't really know yet. But if Hall were to miss any time, Davis would be the clear-cut workhorse back on this offense that, yeah, it looks horrendous right now. Do you really want any pieces of this Jets offense? Not really. But I will say this, if Justin Fields is benched in week 8, we like Tyrod Taylor from a fantasy perspective. I think he can actually run this offense, move the football, something that Fields has proven that he can't. So if Taylor is under center, then maybe this offense gets a slight boost than what Fields has done so far. But the biggest reason, obviously, why Isaiah is on this list is we know. The Jets 0-7, another lost season, nothing to play for. They look horrible. They're going to clean house at the end of the year. Everyone's going to get fired. Why would you not trade away Hall now and get some value for him? I don't even care if it's a 3rd-round pick, 4th-round pick. Get something for Hall because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. He's not coming back. He is not re-signing with the Jets. He doesn't want to be here. They don't want him here. So why would you not just trade him now? get something for him, and then Davis would be the RB1 on this team. Again, not great offense, but anytime you can get the RB1 on any offense for free off the waiver wire right now, you do it. So that's really why I think you should be adding Davis onto your roster. Like I said, for a couple dollars, couple fab dollars, like it seems like a no-brainer because Breece Hall, all the reports are saying he's not going to get traded, but you always hear that type of stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, one day Breece Hall is gone. I don't know where Hall would go. Chiefs, Bears, who really knows? But if you have room, obviously this is more of a luxury stash than anything with a ton of teams on bye. I get it if you can't stash Davis, but I wanted to put him on this list because I do think that Breece Hall is still going to get traded. I really do. All right, moving on to our next guy, Troy Franklin, wide receiver for the Broncos, who's been very hard to trust in fantasy this season. He had that monster performance in week 2 where he racked up 24 fantasy points, and we're all like, oh yeah, he is going to have a breakout campaign. And then he really hasn't done much since. And week 7 was an interesting game for Franklin as he had 3 catches for 19 yards, a touchdown, 10 targets, season high in targets. You like to see that. 12.9 fantasy points. But the touchdown came on a fluky tipped pass into the end zone where he did make a fantastic grab on. But again, very fluky. The targets, though, you love to see the 10 targets. You would like to see him catch more than 3. I don't know how catchable the passes from Bo Nix were, as he's been struggling a little bit as of late outside of week 7. But nonetheless, Franklin still ran the second most routes on the team behind Courtland Sutton, 73% route participation. And Bo Nix, who has been struggling, I think he is starting to heat up after that performance in week 7, 4 total touchdowns. You really like to see that. Nix, Franklin, our former teammates in college. Maybe that holds some sort of value. Maybe their connection progresses a little bit more on this offense, considering he is the wide receiver too, behind Courtland Sutton. Marvin Mims flashed last week. Marvin Mims has played well. He's just not seeing as much work as Franklin is. So I prefer to bet on the guys who are on the field more often. And if you're looking for a high upside receiver this week that you can get off the waiver wire for pretty cheap, then I would be targeting Troy as the Denver Broncos face off against the red hot Dallas Cowboy offense this week. This game could be a massive shootout between 2 good offenses. We know the Broncos have a good defense, but they let Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo kind of walk up and down that field. Imagine what Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens can do on offense, right? So I think this is a great spot for Franklin as the Cowboys have a terrible defense. They're allowing the most PPR points per target to perimeter receivers. So if you're in desperate need of a receiver that could blow up this week that has a ton of upside, could he give you 2 points? Absolutely. This is a high risk, high reward player, but you probably really need a receiver with 6 teams on bye. Go after Franklin. He could have his best game of his season in week 8. All right, moving on to our next guy, Devin Neal, the rookie running back for the New Orleans Saints, who is going to have a role on this offense now with Kendre Miller, unfortunately, tearing his ACL. Neal was ultra productive in college at Kansas. 2023, he had over 1,400 total yards, 17 touchdowns. 2024, over 1,500 total yards and 17 touchdowns again. He did fall to the 6th round in the NFL draft because the running back class was extremely good, extremely deep, and that's why Neal fell, because there were so many options. But that doesn't mean that Devin is not a good player, because I think he absolutely is. And this is also a bigger player sitting at 5'11", 215. He possesses that 3-down skill set that you want in an NFL running back. He can get it done on the ground. He can get it done through the air. And with the Saints sitting at 1-6, it's like the Jets. They're headed towards another lost season. Why would they not give the rookie more opportunities, more runs, see what they have in him? Alvin Kamara has been not great for most of the year. He's an older player. He's 30. Like, Alvin Kamara does not have a trade clause in his contract. I thought he did. So there's a chance that Kamara could still get traded at this point. I know he's told upper management he wants to retire as a Saint, but it's a business at the end of the day. If they can get something for Alvin, why would they not do it? Because they're playing for nothing this year. They lost Kendra. Obviously, that's not great, but I think Devin Neal can still fill the void if they were to trade Kamara, and he would have top 24 upside at the position. And even if Kamara does stay on the team, Neal could still have a role. I think Neal is a very fun, explosive player, young player who has upside if given the opportunity. Obviously, this is more of a stash than anything, but if you have a bench spot open, if you're looking for a guy that could be something the second half of the year, could have some fantasy value, then look no further than Devin Neal. Obviously, this is more for teams that have a winning record that don't have a ton of guys on bye this week and have the opportunity to stash some high upside players that could go off the second half of the year. All right, some other strong ads that I really like. Luther Burden for the Bears, still like him. Tyler Algier is an interesting name because the Falcons play the Miami Dolphins this week. And what does that mean? They're going to run all over Miami. And if they get up big early, Algier is going to get some work. And if he gets some work against this run defense, he could very well score a touchdown. Darnell Mooney for the Falcons as well. Christian Watson, he's probably going to be active in week 8 for the Packers. Colston Loveland, the rookie tight end for the Bears. We know Cole Kmet got banged up last week, so maybe they start to give Loveland, who they spent a top 10 pick on in the NFL draft, more work. Jalen Coker for the Panthers with Andy Dalton taking over as QB1. Malik Washington for the Dolphins. If you're really desperate, maybe Jalen Waddle does end up getting traded. Who knows? And then 2 running backs. They kind of flopped last week. Do apologize about that. Tajay Spears and Bayshul Tootin. These are guys who still need to be on your bench, who could have massive roles as the season goes on. That's all I have for you guys today. I really appreciate each and every one of you. If you guys enjoyed the video, if you could please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and I'll see you in the next one.